Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Saturday Morning Comic Review. I'm your host, Dylan Wallace. Today, we got a great issue for you guys. Excited for this one because all of the books, except for one, is a current. And the only reason that one is not is because I only pulled 9. And you guys know if you're a returning listener or viewer, usually do 10 books. Pulled 9, was able to read all 9, and then I just had one extra just to kind of round it out. And I actually read that book before I got the pulls on a Thursday. So, everything's going to be current and going to be up to date, which is really nice. So with that, as you guys know, for the format of the show, we do the current week pulls. I'll show you next week pulls, and then we'll do the review as well for 10 books in total. So let's go ahead and jump into those pulls, shall we? So we are loaded up here with... almost forgot what button to press. The polls, but I do also like to start off with what the kind of picks of the week are this far. And so if you can see it up here on your screen, and of course we're using League of Comic Geeks to keep track of all this stuff. So for the current week, top 5 books by far and away, couldn't believe it when I saw this, is Absolute Batman number 11. 42% of the vote, which is huge. If you tuned into the previous week, you saw that the book of the week was only in like the mid-20s, maybe even lower 20s. So to be at 42 is overwhelmingly, this is the best book that we have going on. I think the last time Absolute Batman was in the polls, I think it was a very similar score. So definitely the best book and comic that I'm seeing just looking at raw numbers here. On top of that, then we have Imperial number 3, comes in at number 2. Then Absolute Flash number 6 at number 3. Detective Comics 1100 comes in at number 4. And then Batman and Robin Year 1, number 10, comes in number 5. So of those 5 books, I have 3 of them, and 3 of them we will be reviewing for today, which is awesome. But with that, let's go ahead and flip to the actual polls that we have for the week. So again, 9. I'm not going to call out any backlogs or anything like that because it's all current and it's all being reviewed. But here are the 9 that we pulled. Absolute Batman number 11, Absolute Flash number 6, Dark Honor number 4, Exquisite Corpses number 4, G.I. Joe number 10, Hyde Street number 8, Imperial number 3, The New Gods number 9, and The Seasons number 7. So those are the 9, and the only other one that I'm adding to the reviews for this week is Batman 160, which is a backlog, and it's part 2, I want to say, of Hush. So that is where we're at. So let's go ahead and then jump into the reviews for this week. And so for the reviews, brief reminder, or if you are new to the show, I do spoil these books in their entirety. So if you're not into spoilers, this just isn't going to be the show for you. So just please bear that in mind. But I try to catch you up on where the story is thus far. I'll give you my score, I'll give you the league score, and I'll let you know whether or not this is a good time to jump into this book. We'll do that for all 10. What I like to do before we get started is just list out the 10 different books so that way you know what we have and in what particular order in case you want to skip around. So we have Exquisite Corpses number 4, Imperial number 3, Absolute Batman number 11, Absolute Flash number 6, The Seasons number 7, G.I. Joe number 10, Hyde Street number 8, The New Gods number 9, Dark Honor number 4, and then we have Batman 160. So those will be the books in that order. And we'll start off with Exquisite Corpses here. Man, this book is still very, very good. The premise here, of course, it's almost like a battle royale with ultra-rich folks, each representing the 13 original colonies. Basically what they do once every 4 years is they'll pick a champion, quote-unquote. They'll pick a random town in the middle of nowhere, completely shut off the town. They leave power on, but they remove like any emergency services, the cell phone lines, telephone, all that stuff is just gone. They drop all these people in, and each one of the champions are chosen by the actual head of that particular state, and the winner is the last person standing, and that winning family then controls the country for the next 4 years. So it's basically like, here's the deep state and the people that are actually running things that happen in this country, And some people just take this as a joke. So they will just pick like a serial killer or like some sort of crazy psycho person, all for fun and games. They have all these side bets. They're just drinking and partying, doing like all the sicko billionaire stuff that we all imagine that these people are into, right? So that is basically the premise. But there are some people that take this extraordinarily seriously, right? Because they're like, hey, we do want to actually, run the country. And a lot of this book focuses in on South Carolina, which is one of those families that really want to run the country. And then also we get a really good glimpse at Fox Mask Killer, which is the main person on the very first issue and the one that showed a lot of interest. This is the first entrant that's been in this multiple times, so they've all seemed like that was going to be the protagonist, and this is finally an issue where a lot of the focus is on Fox Max Killer and then also Lady South Carolina. So to catch you up, I mean, the premise is really the premise, and that's all the backstory that you really need. The other issues followed one of the killers, and they were either killed or just shows the killing spree that they go on. The thing to note also is they don't warn the town or anything, right? So they paid off the sheriff to just leave and never come back again. And all the people that live in this small town just are living out their kind of regular days. And it's all happening around Halloween as well, or on Halloween night is where it all starts too. So each one of these killers, not only were they drafted by one of the heads of these states, but they also draw a card, and that card is the weapon that they get. And so Lady South Carolina got arrow, and as you can see from the cover here, she basically got a crossbow is what she decided to go with. And then Fox Mask Killer ended up with a sword. So that's what those two basically have going into this fight. And I realized, you know what? I'm kind of discombobulated here. I realized I didn't say what the score is. So this one, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. This issue, still very, very good. But yeah, back to the review. And now that I got you caught up, focusing on this book in particular, Lady South Carolina goes to a car dealership, and they have like a GPS that basically shows you here's where your cash is. She runs into this guy who runs the dealership, and this mom. The mom has some kids that we met earlier as well, and they're out trick-or-treating or partying or doing whatever. And so she's just trying to buy a car. Turns out the cash is not in one of the nicer cars. It's like in like a crappier car that's in the lot. But she's like, of course, I want this one. And they're like, okay, that's weird, but go ahead, go for it. And she does a little GPS tracker. It goes to the trunk. And rather than her opening up the trunk, she asks the owner of the dealership, hey, can you, open it up, of course, right? She's the client and the customer. So, of course, he goes to open it up. And when he does, there's some sort of booby trap set there. And then the guy's hand gets completely sliced off, right? Just blood splattered all over the place. And she's like smiling about it because she knew that it was going to be booby trapped, or just assumed that it would be by someone else. So she goes in, grabs her crossbow. And as she does that, of course, the guy who just lost his hand and then the assistant woman there are like freaking out of like, we had to call 911, but the phones aren't working, like they don't know what to do. And then Fox Mask Killer shows up. You have a scene right before where she actually interacts with the wife of the car dealership owner, and you can tell that they are just like in this terrible marriage. And so she's like spying on him, making sure he's not like cheating and like what else he might be doing in the middle of the night. And Fox Mask Killer shows up, and that woman had kids in the car, and she's actually like very nice and pleasant, whereas every other person that we've run into with one of these killers, like they are just an insane psycho killer. And so we realize that Fox Mask Killer has a daughter, and maybe she's trying to regain the daughter. Also didn't realize it was she from the first issue, but it's very clearly established that it's a she as well. And she is, if like you don't have a visual, just imagine Kill Bill is what she is. So samurai sword, like this dope ass leather jacket, and wearing like this mesh thing underneath, and just looks like a modern day badass samurai wearing this mask that is a fox. So she shows up to fight off Lady South Carolina, and they just go at it. And so apparently Fox Mask was the champion of South Carolina in the previous battle royale. We don't know the full details yet. I'm sure that'll unfold as we go throughout the series here, but something went sour, and that has something to do with her daughter, so they're going head to head. Lady South Carolina is not like a trained killer or like a mercenary or anything like that. She's part of the family and has been training all these years in particular preparation for this, right? So just like If you want to do a Hunger Games kind of equivalent, she's from like District 1, like volunteering to go in, and it's like an honor for her to go into this battle royale and like try to win it for her family. So they're fighting, and it looks like either one could really win, but Fox Mask is like knows with a crossbow, I'm just gonna stay close to you. Eventually deflects an arrow and then slices the crossbow in half. And that's the one and only weapon that Lady South Carolina had. So it's like, what is she going to be able to do? And rather than killing her, Fox Mask just decides to walk away, which is like, damn, that's a pretty dope, kind of power move. And, literally the objective of the game is to kill everyone and be the last one standing. But she's like, hey, with your weapon neutralized, I know someone else is going to get you, basically. And so just decides to walk off. So that is like a big part of the issue. The other piece is at the very end, the person that set off the trap in the trunk of the car, that the car dealership dude's hand got cut off, apparently she's been setting up traps all over the place. And so you have the games themselves, but then you have like staff as well to make sure that the games are going accordingly. People are finding the caches, they're setting up all the boundaries and making sure that the telephone lines are cut. And so she set up a trap, and one of the people that works for the game itself is like caught in that trap. And she like threatens him of like, hey, you take another step and you're going to die. It's like, well, if I die, didn't you know for the rules? Like, that doesn't mean you're going to win. Like, you're going to die as well. She's like, I wouldn't be so certain about that. It's like, really? Do you want to try it? Do you want to like test this out? This is the very first time you've been in this, and this is not my first game. She's like, you know what? Fine, I'll give you a pass now. But if you fall into one of my other traps, that's on you. So it just goes to show that maybe some of these killers are way smarter than we're giving them credit for, and we'll see where all that shakes out in the end. Awesome book, really cool story, really interesting storytelling and different elements that we can do with each one of these characters. It's incredible stuff. So really looking forward to this. And I should say, I had to look it up on Wikipedia. So obviously Lady Carolina is South Carolina, but Fox Mask is part of New York for this year. So that's like kind of like the main rivalry. And in this book, we didn't get any glimpse of like the billionaire party. It was like all just stuff actually happening in the arena, if you will. So let's go ahead and show off some of the artwork here for Exquisite Corpses. Still very good. And this is James Tynion, of course, on the storytelling. And so it's just very dark and screwed up, messed up, twisted stuff, as always with him. But man, it's just such an interesting concept come to life. And I'm like so here for it. And I'm glad it's Tynion on it. It's just really living up to expectation as far as like an independent book with a pretty cool concept. So yeah, it's excellent stuff. I do recommend. I would say start with number one. Number one is just, it sucks you in on here are all the different champions that they hired and who they brought in and what their backstory is, and it like sets up each one as though it's like the start of like this huge action movie. It's really well done. So just start with number one if you can get it. I don't think it would be the best one to start here. You're just gonna miss some context. You don't see anything on the billionaire families, so yeah, you're not gonna want to start here. Start with number one if you can. Alrighty. Next one here. Alrighty. Next one here we have is Imperial number 3. And this one, flip over. This one I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.2. Overall, I think this was, and I feel like this has kind of been the theme for the whole week. You get a lot of backstory on these different characters and what all is actually happening outside of like the main storyline, and that's what you basically get here for Imperial number 3. And so for the story on this one, to basically catch you up, in the first 2 issues we have this huge war and conflict that was all set up between it's like an intergalactic, multiple civilizations and empires together on this space council. This whole war breaks out by a Wakandan sniping one of I think it's the Kree, the Skrulls, and then multiple of these leaders. And then there are also these leaders that were taken out via some sort of illness as well. And it starts this full-out war. Issue number 2 is all about the war that takes place. But within that, then there's this more further conflict. Some members of one empire are like 2 different classes that are fighting within one another. The Kree and the Skrulls, they start attacking one another as well. And then it's basically one person from each nation. You have Shuri, You have Star-Lord, you have Nova. They're all like trying to figure out like, okay, there's something else greater that's going on here. And that's where we pick up for issue number 3, is they're trying to figure out what's going on. So those 3, they head to Nova's home world. He basically has this helmet that's way deep in their archives that he thinks is basically their last-ditch effort to be able to relieve like the cloud that is the ruse of whatever is actually going on, right? So who's the hand behind what is actually controlling here? He tests it out, and sure enough, he says, I know who it is. And then we get to basically part 2 of the book, and it is the reveal that it is the Grand Master and Maximus who are working together. Maximus basically has a wager for the Grand Master of, hey, in a year, can you fabricate a war and do it without anyone being none the wiser of what is actually happening, because he has some sort of plan. And if you're able to do this, I will give you, and Maximus is an Inhuman, I will give you the whole genome and all the DNA history of Inhumans, basically putting the entire race at risk, because he could just go off and sell that or do whatever it is that he wants with it. And so the Grandmaster agrees, and he's able to do so. They go and sit in this big room and lay out all the pieces of the different kingdoms and empires and who those leaders are. And he just explains exactly what has happened in the last 2 books. Sets up this illness that kills off a whole bunch of them, which is what happened. Sets up this dissension in between the different empires, which is what happened as well. And sure enough, within a span of an Earth year, this whole intergalactic war takes place. And so at the end of it, obviously Grandmaster wins, and Maximus is like, you've won, I'm going to give you the DNA. And Grandmaster's like, nope, keep it, because actually I don't want this world to be like this. I just proved that I could beat you in the game that you laid out, and so I'm going to revert everything back or change it up a little bit to how I want it. And so that's what he plans to do. So Maximus starts freaking out. He's like, no, I need this for us to advance our civilization and do what we needed to do. And Grandmaster's like, well, sucks to suck, that wasn't part of the terms. He's like, yeah, you say that wasn't part of the terms, but Maximus is kind of like a cheat and a liar and a thief. And so he actually had one of the pieces not on the table, like up his literal sleeve, and had it hidden. And one of them is Black Bolt. And he basically shows up right at where they're playing and completely destroys the Grandmaster. So that way the Grandmaster can undo everything that was done and keeps this war still going on and continuing. So we know that Nova, Cherie, and Star-Lord, they now know. But Maximus has basically completed all that he needs to do. So now we have, issue number 4 is going to set up the big conflict that takes place between the two. So pretty cool. Intergalactic thing, spy, thriller, you kind of name it. I've been enjoying the hell out of it. It is Hickman. I just don't think it quite pushed it up to a 4.5, but I was in between a 4 and a 4.5, and then I landed with a 4. So let's go ahead and look at some of the artwork here. Artwork is excellent, I would say. Now it's Hickman, so of course you're going to have Exposition City as to be expected. So bear that in mind. But, I'm a huge sucker for just space landscapes, galaxies and novas and the clouds and all the different, purples and pinks and star kind of blue hues that you get with that as well. A lot of this game takes place on this aquatic planet, which has a really nice backdrop to it as well. So really excellent job there. And overall, it's just been a fun, interesting ride, and it's only going to be, I think, a 4-part. Let me actually double check that. Is it 4 or 5? Yeah, just a 4-parter. So it's all going to come to a conclusion here. Obviously, with that being said, you're going to want to jump in at number 1. It's very confusing to start now. Although issue number 3 does a pretty good job of laying out of like, here are the different pieces and what exactly happened and what the Grandmaster did. So you might be fine, but you just should start with 1. It's just a 4-part. So that would be my recommendation there. So that's Imperial, issue number 3. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.2. Ooh. Then next here, we got the Big Daddy, man. We have Absolute Batman, issue number 11. And sticking kind of with that theme that I talked about, I gave this one a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.5 as well.
Nailed it. I know. Thank you. Moving on.
And so this issue here, incredible. The last 2 for Absolute Batman, I gave 5s. This wasn't quite there, but still an excellent, excellent book. It's been incredible what they are doing here in this universe and just how dark and gruesome it is. I would have thought that Tynion wrote it, like how kind of scary it is, to be honest with you. It's insane. So we get the backstory here of Bane. And obviously we're in the Absolute Universe, which is something that is an alternate universe from the standard DC that we know. And each one of the heroes and villains all have like different origin stories and things like that. Some are very similar, some are completely different heroes, and so on and so forth. This Bruce Wayne grows up poor, so very different background than he had previously. But Bane, this issue, we learn more about his past and his history and his origin story, really. So that's most of this book. And it'll go back and forth between Bane's origin and what is actually happening present time. So Batman is now captured by Bane. He's trying to escape multiple times. In the previous issue, I think it was like 3 times that he escaped. Bane stopped him every time, and he's just trying to break him down. And it finally looks like Batman has a pretty good shot this breakout. And so now the entire story is told as Alfred, and Alfred is not his butler, obviously, because he's poor. He's like this international spy who knew about Bane, and he's like, I didn't warn you about him, and he's basically just telling the whole story of the origin, all in third party, of like, here's likely what's going to happen, here's all the things that are going to take place, and then it'll go back to like present tense. So it's a pretty cool of like bouncing back and forth between the two. But you learn similar origin story, but here Bane was the son of like a rebel fighter who was also like the son of like the original rebel fighter for this island that's trying to be liberated and gain their freedom, but they're constantly getting conquered and taken over by all these different powers constantly. So the island is just basically never let alone. So he's just grown up in just this war-torn island rebellion. They all get captured and they're sent to prison, and they're sent to this like horrible, horrible prison that you can only imagine like how terrible this is. So much so that the cells are like somewhere below sea level at night. When it gets to high tide, they have like these steel bars above them, so they can't escape above, but the tide comes in up above their heads. So they have to literally grab up and hold on to the iron bars above them so they can breathe and hang from the iron bars all night and be able to sleep. Ridiculous. And then all like the dead things are all swimming up to them, and they're not just in there for a year, they're not just in there for 2 years, for 5 years, for damn near a decade. 9 years is how long that they're in there for. And so constantly just beaten down of like having this hope and like seeing the freedom of the island. They finally come up with this plan and escape. Bane mostly leaves the charge with his father there as well. And they reach to like the end of the island, and he meets a guy in a white suit who offers up something to Bane. We don't know what it is. Bane turns back, looks at his father. His father is at first like kind of worried, but then he's like happy. They embrace, and Bane literally hugs him to death. And we don't know why. And so now Bane has then become like the crazy mass assassin, marauder that he is now, mercenary really. And they hook him up with all this venom juice, of course. And it turns out that the island now is actually safe. It's like great to live at. There's no crime. People are going to school, this, that. And he says he goes and visits constantly. And what they're trying to do now is turn Batman into that, but for Gotham. And so this fight that takes place in this final escape attempt is so bloody and so gruesome. So Batman has like a battle axe in this. Goes and swings it at Bane. Bane grabs it, stops it, grabs his arm, takes the battle axe and slices off Batman's arm. One arm missing. Takes the next arm and literally rips it off from his shoulder. Now he's missing 2 arms. One cut in half, like, at the bone, at the elbow, and the other completely ripped off from the socket. Gruesome stuff. And so Bane drags the carcass back to, whatever the operating table is, and they get him all sewn up and stitched up, and they're trying to make him into the next version of Bane. So they, hop him up with the venom, and then they reattach the arms, so now he's got these like bionic arms, which is nuts. And they send Batman out to kind of be like the next mercenary and are starting the brainwashing process. But Bane knows that this isn't Batman giving up. Not at all, actually. He realized that what Batman has done is surrendered himself, so that way he would get hopped up on all this stuff, and now he can actually go and likely take on Bane, which is nuts. And so since Bane knows that, he's like, okay, if I wasn't able to break you by just physically breaking you, I'm going to go after your friends. And that's the cliffhanger of like him opening the door and all of his friends are there. So that's where he's going to go next. Crazy book, insane. The whole arc has been nuts. All of Absolute Batman has been nuts, but this Bane one in particular is like, holy shit. Like, it is on another level. So good. So we'll go and flip through some of the artwork here. I would say you don't want to jump into this one. You want to jump in maybe a little sooner. I would say issue number 9 is going to be the start of this arc, because I believe they're technically calling this, part 3. So you'd be fine at 8 or 9. Either one, I think you'd be good. So here is all the backstory of the island and everything that happened there, and then they start to weave in some. And so at first I thought this guy in the suit, I thought it might actually be Joker, but I forgot for a second. He's actually friends with all the people that would be like his traditional rogue gallery, is actually his friends in this as well. So I think Jack Napier he's actually friends with, but he may not be, and this is like the same Joker because it alludes to like laughing and smiling and telling a joke. So, but I could be wrong there. But we really just don't know as of right now. And then, boom, it flashes forward to the actual fight taking place before Bane just goes nuts. Look at that full spread on that one. Batman in the background. Bane just his forearm is like literally the size of Batman. Bane is just freaking massive. So it is the battle that goes on here. Going to swing the axe. Bane has the axe up. Goes to brings it down. Chops off the arm. Clean as could be. And then rips off the other arm here, which is just nuts. And then here he is just lying there, like both arms completely missing. Insane. Blood dripping off and everything. And then smashes the axe like onto his head, like flat side down. Boom, directly onto Batman. And you can see like an eyeball hanging out. It's like, it's gruesome. Gruesome stuff. So they put him on the operating table, hype him all up with the juices, and they actually think that he's like the one that actually could have a shot of becoming the next Bane. And like here is him all hopped up on the Venom and reattached with the arms and everything. It's like, dude, he looks like the Terminator. It's like freaking nuts. So it's so cool. What an awesome story. And then here, this is Bane at the end coming in onto his friends here, going after them. He's like, if I can't break you, then I'll have to break them. So good. Absolute Batman, issue number 11. Again, definitely comic of the week. I mean, it was 42% leading in for picks of the week. It's my comic of the week very, very easily. So excellent stuff. Highly recommend. Absolute Batman number 11. I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.5 as well. Then we have Absolute Flash. Just as good in the Absolute universe. Maybe one of the weaker ones, I would say. But it's still a good story. So going along with the theme here, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 3.9. This story as well is the backstory, but here we get it of the Colonel, which is Wally's father, and Wally is like the Flash. So we learn about the Colonel. He recruited a whole bunch of people, which was featured, I think, in issue number 1, certainly issue number 2. They were trying to track down Wally once he got his powers. It's a ragtag group that did some horrible thing that betrayed the U.S. years and years ago. For some reason, they didn't collect on it at the time, but now they're collecting on it now and saying like, hey, you got to join this group. Otherwise you all are going to go into jail for the rest of your lives. So it's like, join it. Maybe you survive whatever it is we got signed up for you, or rot in jail. So they're not given much of a choice, and they decide to accept. And even the Colonel doesn't really know the extent of what this program is going to be, but then brings them all to the lab, which is the same lab where Wally was turned, and realized that there's, experimentation where they're trying to give regular people superpowers. And this is a flashback of, I want to say it was a couple years ago. Then we flash forward here. The Colonel, you actually see in the flashback that he was trying to call Wally and, try to make things better and make things right with the son then. But it looks like just the relationship is super fractured and very complicated. Now he tries to call Wally again in the present. Wally actually picks up, and as he's talking, he's like, I'll help you, just tell me where you're at. And before, they can get further into the conversation, the Colonel, rag goes around his face, and it's actually the doctor, Dr. Thawne, I think it is, who has the Colonel and is captured because she's the one behind all this super power human experimentation, and actually holds all the cards, and we just don't know what it all necessarily means. We thought it stopped with the Colonel, but it goes much higher than Colonel, which was revealed in this issue, which I think is probably the biggest piece here. So, yeah, that's the story. I think it's more of just to give you backstory on who the Colonel is and who we thought was potentially the big bad or one of the big bads. Maybe not so much. It's just kind of fodder in everything that's happening here. So the artwork here, I think it's fine. You don't have any really Flash reference in this at all. So it's just kind of like standard, the Colonel having conversations with the different squad members, going and paying them each a visit before they finally accept. Then you get some shots of the lab, but there's no real like action that happens in this one. So you have this one scene of this is an explosion that happened years and years ago, and I guess they harnessed this explosion, and that's how they're able to get the superhuman powers, but we don't know too much about that. But at the end, here's basically where he is captured and left, Wally hanging. So I'm sure now Wally knows, like, crap, something happened to my father as well. So I got to figure all that out. So that's Absolute Flash issue number 6. Again, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 3.9. I would say, man, where to jump in? Here's not a good part, but because you just don't have enough context. But I'm like, do you go all the way back to 1? Maybe 2 you'd be okay with. I just don't think there's actually a good part to jump in. So maybe you dive in now, but you might be a little bit lost. But you'd probably just want to start from the beginning if you can, but I understand that's a lot to catch up on at this point. So next we have the Seasons, and this is issue number 7. And this one, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.1. I think it was a solid 4. I wouldn't have gone any higher, and I really didn't contemplate giving it a 4.5. The issue here is, and not the issue like problem, but this issue, what it's about is just a continuation of the story immediately. So we have the Seasons, which is a family of daughters, and each one is named after a season. So spring, winter, autumn, and summer. We're mostly following spring. This whole carnival came to town. They have this mirror thing. If you look at the mirror, it'll mind control you. So what they're trying to do is take over the town and then slowly have all these people look in this mirror. And so spring and winter were able to get out. Autumn, they finally found, who's been missing forever. She basically sacrificed herself to look at the mirror to give spring a chance to escape. And then summer, she immediately looked into the mirror. So she's this big like Hollywood actress and very vain and living up to being a Leo, basically. And so now it's up to spring and winter to try to figure this all out. But when they get outside of the tent, it felt like they were in there for quite a long time, but they were not. Like barely any time has passed. But the whole town, for the most part, is like covered in all these carnival tents. So this issue, they're just basically running through town, trying to get back to their house and trying to escape the grasp of these clowns in the carnival. They run into like the bakery that Spring used to work for, and the baker is like, he's all caught up, so they try to free him, but then he gets caught anyways. They keep chasing him, and then they finally make it to their house. And then when they make it there, they actually grab Winter. So now it's just Spring by herself. She goes into her room, puts on like this battle attire, and is like ready to fight. So we'll see if she's actually able to stop them or not. So that's the story. I mean, it's this is more of just the action before we get to like the climax. So just more kind of like rising action, if you will. But nothing really tremendous happens here, as it is just like the chase. And it's not a good issue to jump into because you don't have the context of what happened on either. You want to maybe start with 6, but maybe even 5 might be a better place to jump in. But 7 here is just kind of a continuation, so you're going to be a bit lost if you don't start a little bit earlier. On the artwork side of things, artwork is excellent. So you have a carnival setting, so it's a lot of like very bright and vibrant colors. So a lot of pinks and yellows and greens. Anything that you'd imagine for a carnival or a carnival tent, that is kind of the color and style that they're going for. And it's more of like a pastel color and not quite like water paint, but if you're looking at the video, you kind of see what I mean. It's almost like a softer like tones and hues than like the dark, like, highly like intense type of coloring that you would typically see. So it's pretty cool from stylistically, I'd say, the book, because you have the chase of like the girl trying to get out, and then like the carnival and all the different tendrils that are trying to capture them, along with the clowns. So it looks really good aesthetically, but from like a story perspective, it is just like a continuation of the chase and them just trying to get away. So simplistic on the story, more of an art focused issue. In the run that is the seasons. So I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.1, and maybe jump it at issue 5, maybe issue 6 if you can. Then next up here is G.I. Joe number 10. So this is good. I gave it a 4. League actually gave it a 4.3. I was a little surprised to see it that much higher. I think I was actually more between like 3.5 and a 4 up until the end, and then I was like, okay, pretty solid 4 here. But the continuation here is you have Baroness and CoverGirl. So Baroness is not escaped. She was on some R&R to go and see her family, and CoverGirl was tasked with like making sure that Baroness didn't turn, because she has a history of being the bad guy. And while they're out there, they get captured by Vulture and Raptor. And Raptor in particular is pissed off at Baroness for, I think, taking his eye way back in the day. And so he set it up to where Baroness and CoverGirl need to fight to the death, basically. Otherwise, he's got Vulture out there who's going to kill Baroness's parents. So pick up here, and both of them start fighting each other, but it's actually play fighting. And so it gets to the point where it looks like Baroness has CoverGirl down. Raptor then jumps down into the pit that they're in, and they're like, ha, got you fooled. We're not actually fighting. They do kind of the leap thing where you have, kind of like a cheerleader with the base and like launching them up into the air. They do that move to get CoverGirl out, and she heads for Vulture to protect the parents. And then Baroness is going to take on Raptor. So you have that piece. The other piece of the story is Destro is just getting more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically just concerned about Cobra Commander and like what is his actual plans. So he's just like nervous and anxious about it, and it's like none of this is suspicious, I think is the word I'm looking for, of like what is actually Cobra Commander doing. He's keeping me in the dark. And so he just goes and confronts him in his lab, and then Cobra's like, all right, I will now show you what we're actually up to, but doesn't get to it. So it's just a lead in for what's going to happen maybe next issue. And then the last part is you have Clutch and the Autobots. So they met up previous issue or maybe 2 ago. And basically now they are trying to find more Energon because they're out. And Clutch is like, yeah, the Cobras, they have this Energon, but we can't power the weapons without it, so we got to find more. Autobot explains, Energon, very valuable. We fight wars back on it, literally on Cybertron. So A, may be very hard to find, but B, I understand why this stuff is so valuable. So they go and they check out the lab from the earlier issues where they recovered the weapons, hoping that they could find some more. And when they get there, they don't find anything, but Clutch was tailed by Risk. So Risk has joined the team, but Risk is like kind of in it for himself and doesn't really trust anyone. And there's been rumor that Clutch has been like not feeling himself. So when he sees, he just follows after him. Of course, he confronts him and Clutch, but the Autobot is like out of sight. And when both of them are kind of arguing with each other, a whole bunch of Cobras are there, and I guess they had the whole place kind of under surveillance. So then they start to confront each other, and it looks like the Joes are in serious trouble, but around the back is the Autobot like facing them. And it's one of those things where you have both of the Joes facing the crowd of the Cobras. The Cobras are facing the Joes, but behind the Cobras is where the Autobot is, so they can see like you got this massive robot behind them that's about to knock them all out. And that's a cliffhanger, which was a nice little visual towards the end there, which I think was probably why I gave it a lot of a boost here, because now it looks like the next issue, like the Autobots are going to make themselves known, which this all takes place in the Energon universe, Transformers and Joes together. But this one, it feels like it's going to be the one, or the next issue anyways, like now the full-on intersection with the Autobots. So let's go ahead and show off some of the artwork here. So here, arguing about fighting to the death, and just a reminder that, yep, you got Vulture out there. He's on the parents. The discussion with Clutch and the Autobot, and then Destro confronting Cobra Commander. The fight that takes place here, and then the fake out towards the end. So you have that section and that fight that's about to take place, and then here's where Clutch and risk, confront one another, and then you have the Autobot at the end. Like, clearly, like, dude, you could wipe literally all of you out with a swing of the wrist, or of the arm. But yep, that is G.I. Joe. Again, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. You'd be fine if you jumped in here, but you probably want to start off at issue number 8, or even 9 would be fine. Either one would be good there. So yep. Then next up here is going to be Hyde Street, number 8. Loving this book a lot. It's pretty interesting. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. I was surprised by that as well. I think similar with Joe's, I was like, straight up, this is a 4. I wasn't really considering a 4.5 for this one either. But Hyde Street, this story is basically about purgatory. So some people will end up on Hyde Street, and the truly, truly evil ones will be stuck there. They have to claim 10,000 souls in order to escape. And terrible people just end up constantly, and they have to lure them in and like kill them in some way, shape, or form. And then they kind of claim these souls, and then there's a big old scoreboard at the end in order to escape. So Mr. X-Ray is kind of like our main protagonist. He's trying to get out to see his daughter, but there's this guy Pranky, or this kid I should say, who's been there forever and ever and ever, has plenty enough to leave, but just won't leave because he doesn't want to. It's got nothing for him out in the real world. And we've met some other folks that are on purgatory as well. So Pranky and Mr. X-Ray in the previous issue, Mr. X-Ray's trying to figure out a way to stop Pranky. And so he gave him this like werewolf mask, and I think Mr. X-Ray sold it as like, this is something you could use. But in the end, it was like kind of a trick. And so Pranky put it on, but he can't get it off. So Mr. X-Ray was like, okay, and this is where we start this issue. You need to stop interfering with my kills. If you do that and you just let me, if I see someone, I tag them and I get the kill, leave it alone. Don't come in and interfere, because then you're just prolonging my time here. So at first Pranky says no, but then he agrees. So when they try to take off the mask won't come off. She's like, crap. All right, so we can probably go see the purgatory doctor, which his name is Dr. Ego. So they go to him, and they show up in this waiting room, and it's like this obviously rundown clinic. They have some nurses there that just won't pay attention. It's just like the worst case scenario that you could ever imagine in the healthcare space. They finally go and see Dr. Ego, and I guess he's there because of his ego, right? Rather than actually just following whatever the textbooks say and all this, that, and the other. It's his ego. It's like, I think I know best, and he'll just do whatever he feels like doing. And so he finally works on Pranky, and at first he tries to take off the mask. He's like, yeah, that's real fur. I don't think there's much I could do. And for whatever reason, he gets this idea to take Mr. X-Ray's glasses. So he has like these X-ray spinner glasses that he has on. Takes them off of Mr. X-Ray, puts them onto Pranky. Pranky looks through them, and he sees images of his mother. But we don't get much other than like it looks like she was pregnant during one of the wars, and it basically kind of cuts out from there. Then at the very end, we get another person who's on Hyde Street. It looks like she's like a tarot card reader, and she was trying to capture her soul, and in doing so, she pulled this card, and the card revealed the Butcher of Hyde Street. So she goes to see the Matinee Monster, who's another one on Hyde Street. It's like, oh my gosh, he's back. I guess the Matinee Monster's been there forever. She's been there forever. I pulled the card. It's the Butcher of Hyde Street. He's going to be coming back. We have no idea who that is or what any of that means, but clearly she's freaked out and sought to go get the Matinee Monster as well. So we'll see what that is all about for the Butcher of Hyde Street in the next one. So yeah, I mean, good issue. I think more of just trying to advance the story here, and so we'll see what this Butcher is all about. Maybe we get some backstory. Maybe we get the attack and then the backstory after that. TBD. So that's Hyde Street number 8. I'd say you want to jump in. Actually, no, maybe you want to jump in at 7. You might be okay here, but go with 7. But yeah, Hyde Street number 8. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. Then we have the New Gods number 9. So this one, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.1. I was actually maybe leaning towards 3.5 or 4 on this one. If you've been listening to my reviews, for whatever reason, the New Gods is just not clicking with me. It's a Rom V joint, one of the GOATs, but for whatever reason, it's just not clicking. And I think part of it is it's a tougher read because we have like aliens and different empires and, you know, different gods and things like that. So, you know, just getting through the names of things, the gods themselves or the actual places, and things where you're unfamiliar, that can kind of make it tough because it's like, how am I supposed to pronounce this? But I think even still, I'm not necessarily driving what the story is. So thus far, we have these new gods or gods of like, I don't know, far, far away galaxy, basically. Their whole planet was taken over. They come to Earth. First, Earth is like, we don't know about this, but there's a new god that has shown up, and he's like a child, but he's like some sort of weapon. So they're trying to take him in and maybe potentially use him to fight back to get their land. But at first, it kind of seems like maybe they're just going to hang around for now. But in this issue, we start off, it's the Nakari, something like that. They are the ones that attack the new gods. They want total annihilation, so they haven't stopped the attack. So though these gods have fled and made their way to Earth, they're still pursuing until they completely eradicate them out of the universe. Non-existent. And so one of the Green Lanterns notices that the Nakari are still out there, and they're sending out like different scouts. So they send a relay back to John Stewart to let him know like this is still happening. So the gods on Earth, it's no longer the High Father in charge. He abdicated, and they nominate Orion to be the head. And like as his first decree, it's like it's been put out there that the Nakari are coming after us. We want to attack while we can. And now that we have the new weapon on our side, this would be a great way to show our force. So the new weapon is literally a kid. And at first, the kid is like, I don't want to go to war. Like, I don't know what any of this stuff means. I just want to hang out with my parents. And so he's like really scared. And he goes and talks to someone who just showed up. His name is Surafan. And so Surafan shows up and basically explains like, hey, if you ever have a concern or worry, you can just come to me. And Surfan like literally showed up in issue 8, so here he is in issue 9, and the kid is like, I just don't want to do this. Like, what do I do, Surfan? And he's like, don't worry, I got you. And he pulls out his gun, and it looks like he's going to shoot him. But rather than shooting him, he gets absorbed into like one of his bullets, and then Surfan just leaves. So he's kidnapped this new god. And basically you get some exposition of like, well, all these gods have been around for eons and eons and eons. Anytime a new one shows up, they're like the new shiny thing, and then now it expands what the powers are of potentially the universe. So very sought after kid, because we just don't know what this weapon could potentially do. And apparently Seraphan was working for this other group of gods, like a completely different tertiary one, and now they're going to exploit the kid for whatever it is so they can now gain control and power. So that's the story. That's where we're at. As far as the artwork, the cover, look at that. Cover is pretty dope. I'll give credit there. So you have a whole bunch of like different faces of folks, but you have the background of New Genesis there, a bunch of reds and blacks and grays, but I'm liking that. It's pretty cool. And then the artwork here is good. I mean, the New Gods artwork has been pretty solid throughout. No issue there. So here's the Green Lantern piece, and they still see the Kari are out there, and they're trying to get a message back. They're able to get it back to Earth, and it looks like they're going to have to go and fight, but the kid doesn't want to. And so then that's where he links up with Seraphan, and like you can see he like captures him into one of his bullets and then takes him and disappears, ends back up on this different planet, and they're like, yeah, we got plans for you, kid, basically. So yep, that's New Gods number 9. Again, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.1. If you want to get into New Gods, I would just recommend starting with number 1, to be honest with you. It's just pretty confusing overall, I would say. So then we got Dark Honor number 4. This is like the surprising book for me of how much I'm starting to enjoy it now versus what it was. And look at that for League. Doesn't even have a rating. So that means not many people are picking it up at this point. It's a 5-part series, so this is the second to last one. And at first the book was horrible, first couple issues. Now it's like, okay, this is like kind of decent. So I gave it a 4, and there's just no score for League. But for the book itself, this takes place smack dab in the middle of COVID. A lot of like masking up, like are there vaccinations, are there not, like the 6 feet, all that stuff. So it's like wears it on its sleeve that this is a COVID story. But it's about gang wars and families. So you have these 5 main gang families, and then you have this honor group that is kind of the security for all of them and just tries to keep the peace. This one guy, Grigor, sees this as an opportunity during COVID to go after these 5 families and take them out. But rather than simply killing them, he's after like this information that they have, and that's revealed in issue number 3. Each one of them has a key, and then the guy who's the head of like the honor group also has a key. So he needs 6 in total. and that gets him access to the information. And then in issue 4, you actually figure out what that is. So issue 4, it starts off with one of the honor code guys betrayed them all, and is what allowed Grigor to get the 5 keys. They pretended to be paramedics, basically sneaking into places during COVID, right? So like paramedics all over the places, in New York City as well. So, hotbed for COVID, and people are kind of none the wiser, but they're actually there to steal these, their keys, but they're like USB sticks basically. So they go ahead and take all of that, and then this issue starts with the betrayal. But the main guy, Yosef, and his daughter is Rain. Rain's like kind of our main protagonist. They're able to take the guy out pretty easily. But now Yosef is like, it's just me. There's an uncle and Rain. So he's like, Rain, now you're officially in. So it's literally just 3 of us to try to figure all this stuff out and stop Grigor and his whole gang. And Yosef then basically gives the history of this group. Dates back to Yosef's father, so Rain's grandfather, and then they've been kind of tasked with protecting these 5 families for generations upon the second generation now. They're called the 100. I think that's what they're called. So the 100 used to be 100 people. Now it's literally whittled down to 3. And so Rain's like, okay, I'll help you fight. And she's like, and Joseph's like, okay, that's great, but you got to know what we're fighting for. It's not just this vault that's filled with money. It's literally the ledger of every single thing that these gangs have done for all 5 of them. So any politician that you could possibly imagine, this could take them all down. They've all been bribed or something, or done something for someone else in some way, shape, or form. So that's why it's so valuable. And Yosef has the final key. So Yosef says he's going to meet up with Grigor, and Rain's like, well, you can't do it alone. You got to meet up with me. So let's regroup. We'll meet later this evening. Yosef says, yep, I agree. You can come with. But Yosef lied. He actually decided to go in early. And he goes and faces Grigor by himself. Thinks that he's going to lose, but he's basically like going to die on his shield type deal. It's an honor thing. So he just doing his duty here. So he gets into the fight. Rain tries to show up to stop. Can't. It's in the place at a crematory. So they're fighting. And then one of the crematory, furnaces catches on fire. And so he's like, F it, I'm going to die. He takes the last key that he has, like the USB stick, and he literally leaps into the fire, sacrificing himself. But that way, Grigor can't get the final key. And now you have Rain, like, looking in of like, oh my gosh, now it's like me and just the uncle against Grigor and all this stuff that's happening. The other piece we also found out too, the girl that Rain was with in the previous issue is actually working for Grigor. So she's like literally by herself. So we'll see how it all gets concluded in issue number 5. But it's a pretty cool story. At first I thought I was like, okay, the COVID's like a little bit too much. But overall, it's actually kind of a nice touch of how it all kind of makes sense of like, yeah, that could have happened during COVID. Yeah, that would have been a good opportunity to take over. Yeah, that makes sense how all the paramedics were able to kind of get in there. And then the crematorium, right, with like what were they able to do with all the bodies, this, that, and the other. So now you get to kind of the fight scene here, and then, yeah, here's where Yosef decides to go and sacrifice himself so that nobody is able to get the hands on the final key. And now it's like, damn, what are Rain and her uncle going to do now to stop Grigor? So that's Dark Honor, issue number 4. I gave it a 4. And then the last one here. So Batman 160. Unfortunately, we have to end on kind of a bummer. So Hush has just not been going well at all. And I'm pretty much caught up after this. I think 161 is then caught up with Batman. So I gave it a 3.1 or 3. Or sorry. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 3.1. I could certainly see a 3.5, but for me, it was fine. I think the biggest thing people don't like about this book is like Batman's using guns in this. And it doesn't make sense. Like guns are featured like pretty heavily here. So that's probably part of it. But for this issue, it's basically Hush setting up a no-win situation for Batman where you have 3 Robins that are all held at gunpoint, and it's like Hush claims all 3 are going to die. I have some theories as to what's going to happen, and 161's already out, so it probably already did to some certain extent, but you have Jason, who's working with Hush, and he's trying to go really after Joker. They've moved Joker's body to a lighthouse of some sort. Then you have Batman trying to investigate, well, where are these scalpels being made for Hush? And it's actually his father who made these particular scalpels, and so he goes to the factory there. Batman runs into Hush, and before Hush shows up there, Robin shows up, and he's actually working with Bane randomly to try and stop Hush, but Hush shows up, grabs him, has him at knife or scalpel point. So that's one Robin. Then the other one is Nightwing. He heads up to the lighthouse to confront Jason. So they start arguing, and then, of course, they start fighting. But then Joker kind of comes too. There are two guns on the ground, picks up the guns, and has them pointed then at Nightwing and then at Jason. So those are the other two Robins. They're held at gunpoint, and then our main Robin, Damian. So you have Damian, Dick, and Jason held at gunpoint as well. And that's a cliffhanger. So I guess that's why people don't like it, but I can imagine what's going to happen. Catwoman's going to swoop in and save one of them, and then the other one might be Batgirl or Batwoman who comes in and saves the other. Like, it's like, seems pretty obvious. So that is probably what is all going to happen there. And so, yeah, I mean, the artwork is incredible. That's mostly what gives it a 4, in my opinion, rather than the storytelling. It's Jim Lee on it, so got to give him props on that. But other than that, maybe too far of a stretch of Batman and his character and what, the character is really all about. I think that's what a lot of people are having issue with on this one. So let's go ahead and show off that awesome artwork that you're getting from Jim Lee. So you start off here with just some more details as to what Jason and Hush are actually working on. Then you get Batman heading out to try to piece together, where are these made? And then here, Batgirl's kind of flying off, and Dick is like, well, screw it. I'm going to go and try to find the clues to hunt down Jason. This is Batman working the scalpel manufacturer, runs into this crazy lady. They start fighting. And then you got Dick scaling up the lighthouse where he confronts Jason, and they start fighting. This is where you have Joker, guns pointed at both Dick and Jason. And then here, back at the scalpel manufacturer, is where you have Batman fighting down with Bane and Damian showing up to try to stop there. And then you have Hush, who pulls up the knife onto Damian in the end. So yeah, that's Batman 160. I mean, overall, it's good. I mean, I wouldn't review on it as nearly as much. I know the next issue, though. Let me go ahead and flip to it real quick so you can see on the screen. The next issue is pretty bad. Yeah, 2.8. So I haven't read it yet. We'll see how it goes, but that is what it is. So we'll see my thoughts. Probably next issue would be my guess, or next episode of the podcast. So that's it. Those are the 10 books. That's what we have. Let's go ahead and show them off real quick and recap them for everyone, both viewers and listeners. So we had Exquisite Corpses number 4, Imperial number 3, Absolute Batman number 11, Absolute Flash number 6, The Seasons number 7, G.I. Joe number 10, Hyde Street number 8, and The New Gods number 9, Dark Honor number 4, and Batman 160. So those are the 10 books we had, and then I'll go ahead and flip over to the polls for next week. So we are locked and loaded with a shit ton. It is 18 books. A lot. I always say I want to be between 10 and 15. So 18 is a lot. I think this is the last big week that I'll have. I'll just call them out and let you know if it's a current week or a backlog week. A current issue or backlog issue. Absolute Martian Manhunter number 6 is current. Actually, I'll just only say the backlogs. It's just easier that way. Then Absolute Wonder Woman number 11. Avengers 29. Death of Silver Surfer number 3. Emma Frost, the White Queen number 3 is a backlog. Green Lantern Dark number 6. Hornsby and Halo number 9. Huck, the Big Bad World number 4. Incredible Hulk number 28. Although I might have stopped Incredible Hulk. I really can't remember. Justice League Unlimited number 10. Miles Morales Spider-Man 37 is a backlog. Minor Arcana number 10. Peacemaker Presents The Vigilante Eagerly double feature number 5 is the end of that one. Ultimate Spider-Man number 20. Void Rivals number 22. We're Taking Everyone Down With Us number 5. That might be the last one of that. West Coast Avengers number 10. And then X-Men 21 is going to be a backlog. So 3 are backlogs, which brings it really down to 15. So like, an issue and a half, if you will. But that's still quite a lot for us to get through. But we'll be able to do it. So with all of that being said, next week is a weird week for me because it's travel week. And I am for sure not going to be able to do an Omega. But I also think as well the regular issue may just have like 4 current books. It's going to be heavily backlogged because that's what I'll be able to get to. I'm not going to be able to pick up the comics until Friday. If I'm even able to really get them on Friday, we'll have to see. So just expect that and kind of keep that in mind, that it's just going to be a regular issue. The only way is if I'm like crazy and I read 10 books over the weekend, which is a possibility. You just never know if I'm like in the mood or not, but I highly doubt it. So just only expect a regular issue for next week. And then from there, we'll be back to kind of regularly scheduled programming. That also means the following week's Omega is mostly going to be these books that I just listed off here. So that would be kind of the expectation. Obviously, things are subject to change as they always are. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. I do appreciate it. You can find me on obviously YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts is where you get the show. Everything's in the description as far as social media. I usually put out like, here are the highlights of the week. Here are the polls if you want to just see like a visual format. So feel free to go and follow, comment, like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff. Feel free to provide some feedback on things you like about the show, things you hate about the show, things you'd like to see me improve upon, things that you'd like me to include that I'm not already doing. That would be super helpful. Just always trying to make this thing better. So we'll close it out. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Go, 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 go.
This has been a DMW production. Thanks for stopping by.